In the early days of the internet, radical libertarians were scattered, lonely, and faceless. Without direction, they resigned to scour the web, sifting through content providers in a wasteland plagued by YouTube demonetization, Facebook jail, and covert internet censorship. But then, in 2017, the Libertarian Union was formed. Finally, the average Joe libertarian could find a thriving community of independent podcasters and content providers, all in one convenient location. At Libertarian Union, we'll always have the latest news, interviews, discussions, and even movie reviews. With hundreds of episodes and more added all the time, you'll always find something fresh at libertarianunion.com.
All right. Let's get fired up here.
Maximum freedom. Read.
Stay on target.
Maximum freedom.
Stay on target.
Maximum freedom. Read Rothbard.
Maximum effort. Hello and welcome to the Actual Anarchy podcast, a podcast where we talk about movies from a Rothbardian Anarcho-Capitalist perspective. My name is Daniel, and I am some asshat, and my overpaid jerk friend Robert is my co-host. Tonight we're going to talk about Deadpool, episode 77 of the show. You can find show notes and more at actualanarchy.com/77, talking about the Deadpool. How you doing, Robert?
Captain Deadpool. I'm doing great, man. This is, not to spoil anything, but this movie, when I first saw it, it felt like somebody just made a movie for me personally. So it hit me right in the wheels. It was good.
Yeah, so
anyway.
Custom movie for Robert right here.
Custom made for yours truly. So I'm not going to be able to find a whole lot of bad things to say about it. But I think it does spark some interesting discussion points. So it'll be fun.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to the conversation. I just watched this the other night and took a couple of notes, so we should have plenty to have a conversation about. Cockshot.
Fine. Maybe we will.
Maybe we will. All right. Well, let's do the normie friendly, shall we? Shall we move over to that?
Yep. Let's move it over.
All right. Just do the bat signal. No, the bat 1960s Batman like dissolve. You know, like da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, or whatever. Anyway.
Da-na-na-na-na-na.
Hey everyone, it's Daniel and Robert, the Last Nighters. We are back at it again doing Deadpool, and this is episode 20 of the show. lastnighters.com/20. You can find the show notes and more, and also special information for everyone. We just launched the podcast, officially podcast stream, at anchor.fm/lastnighters. It is now live on Apple Podcasts and iTunes, Google Play Music, and wherever podcasts are sold for $0. How you doing, Robert?
I'm doing great. Yeah, so subscribe, share. Do what you can, get the word out. Appreciate it. And welcome to another episode of The Last Nighters, everybody. We're going to do Deadpool. Captain Deadpool. In your face.
Phrasing. We're going to do Deadpool. All right. So Deadpool, Google information. Came out 2016, fantasy science fiction film, hour 49 minutes, 8 out of 10 on IMDb, 83% Rotten Tomatoes, 65% Metacritic, but 93% of Google users liked it. Here's the description. Wade Wilson, played by Ryan Reynolds, is a former Special Forces operative who now works as a mercenary. His world comes crashing down when evil scientist Ajax, played by Ed Skrein, tortures, disfigures, and transforms him into Deadpool. The rogue experiment leaves Deadpool with accelerated healing powers and a twisted sense of humor. With help from mutant allies Colossus and Negasonic Teenage Warhead, Deadpool uses his new skills to hunt down the man who nearly destroyed his life. Came out February 12, 2016. Director Tim Miller. Box office $783 million on a budget of $58 million. What do you think?
I take one umbrage point with their dumb description. Otherwise, it's fairly accurate. They seem to imply that the process that transformed him into Deadpool also gave him super funny, sardonic sense of humor, which is not true. He was funny beforehand. He's funny afterwards. He just didn't lose his sense of humor from the transformation process that was super duper painful, whereas even Ajax says no sense of humor escapes this facility. And he's like, oh, we'll see about that. And he was right. He kept his sense of humor throughout the whole movie, as he would have to if this was going to be a Deadpool movie. I'm curious to see what Daniel, Mr. Normie over here, because you see, ladies and germs, I am kind of like the superhero comic book nerd geek guy. I'm the go-to for all the comic book-ish, and Deadpool was a character. See, I had like so many issues of his first appearance, not because I bought them all because I'm super excited about this Deadpool character, because basically Rob Liefeld back in the day, not the greatest storyteller, not the greatest artist, fairly indicative of the 90s, made a lot of ridiculous characters, and there are plenty of comments and articles and videos about said characters. But I happened to be working at a little place called KB Toys at the time, and we had a promotion. We were giving away a copy of X-Force number 1 and 2, I believe, and there were a whole bunch of issues left over, and we were either going to throw them away or just take them, and I just took them. So I got all these issues with Deadpool, first appearance in it. Pretty stoked. They're probably not worth anything, but it doesn't matter. Who cares? It's just kind of a fun little anecdote.
They might be worth something now. You know, it's like he's a big deal. He's a pretty big deal.
All right, big deal. What's going on? So what did you think of this movie, Normie? Not being a superhero guy, not really getting into this stuff. Did you know of the Deadpool character before this? Because really, when Rob Liefeld invented this Deadpool character, he was really not what he is now. He was just kind of like this mercenary in like this Spider-Man costume. And subsequent creators kind of took him and turned him into the character that we know today, and really turned him into popular. But Liefeld is credited with being the original creator. So, did you know of this character? Did you like this movie, Daniel?
I would say I had a vague awareness of Deadpool as a comic book character from back in the day. But prior to seeing the movie, I was not super familiar with it other than what I'd heard about the movie or from the viral, or what do you call that, astro-turfed marketing campaign that they did to kind of promote it.
Oh, yeah. This is one of the best, most genius marketing campaigns in the history of movies to promote this movie. All kinds of, it came out right around Valentine's Day, so there are all kinds of billboards and just funny things everywhere that were all promoting this movie, and boy, did they succeed.
Yeah, now weren't some of them like promos for television shows, and then he would show up in the promo for a television show? You know, like, because NBC will have, like, Thursday night, you know, whatever show is popular now, and show a little clip of it. And
sure, I think there was some of that. Yeah, like subversive, like you're not expecting it to be a Deadpool ad, and then it turns into a Deadpool ad, for sure.
Right, yeah. Because it's all about breaking the fourth wall.
That's
like
right.
The Deadpool character.
Deadpool character is self-aware.
Now, I recall that he was in the Wolverine Origins movie, I think, and his mouth was sewn shut, and so he didn't really have any lines or anything, and also did not break that wall. Does that sound about right?
That is absolutely true. Yeah, he appeared as like this weird mutant version of himself in the movie. Now, Ryan Reynolds was against it, but as I recall, they said, well, basically, you either do this or we'll just get somebody else to do it. And he was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. But this is wrong, and no one's going to like this. And boy, was he right. And then they come out with a real Deadpool movie, and they make fun of all his past stuff, which is really, really enjoyable for me. Making fun of his Green Lantern, making fun of the old Deadpool. There's even a mouth sewn shut line in the movie where he's like, oh, nobody's going to like that. He shouldn't do that. Oh, there's all kinds of fun stuff. And then he pokes fun at himself for saying, Ryan Reynolds hasn't gotten this far on his acting ability. Just all kinds of self-referential stuff that if you're into the meta humor, which I think Deadpool does it probably better than most. It's just real good, man. Real good.
Yeah, and I know they made fun of Hugh Jackman a fair amount in this one as well, which was pretty funny.
Oh yeah. And they're actually, I believe, pretty good friends in real life. So I think he enjoyed it all too.
All right, so back to the, was I super aware of him? No, but it was that viral marketing campaign that really made me aware of his sarcasm and sardonic wit. And I think that is what I think of as Ryan Reynolds as a movie actor. Like, he was in, I'm going to call it Waiting? Was that the one where he was like a cashier at like a Costco type store, and he was like very funny and witty and rude? And then he was also in Van Wilder, I want to say, like National Lampoon type thing, where he's essentially the same guy, right?
Yeah, he's actually waiting. He was like a manager of a TGI Fridays or something like that. But yeah, I know what you're saying. He doesn't really have a whole ton of range. He's done a fair variety of things, but you wouldn't say that he's like an actor who disappears into his roles, a la Matt Damon, who's just a wizard of some kind.
Oh man, yeah. Go back to some of the pre-show content for us making fun of Matt Damon, but Reynolds. I mean, now that I'm aware of who Deadpool as a character is and the history, no one else could have played him. Like, it's Ryan Reynolds or bust.
Yeah, and this movie was a passion project. I don't know if you know this or not, but this was a passion project of his. There was some leaked fan footage, or at least they claim it was fan footage. It was actually pretty dang good CGI of essentially the highway fight of Deadpool in the car with a little bit of bookending. And the fans saw that, and they were like, well, just do that. That looks fantastic. Just make a movie with that in it. And apparently it was some internal stuff that I guess Reynolds and his producers got together and they made, and then it got turned down by Fox, and then Reynolds released it, or leaked it, and then there was such an overwhelming fan response that Fox was like, oh, okay, let's just go ahead and make this. And then they still hardly gave them any money. $54 million for a movie that looks this good is a really paltry sum. I think you would agree that it looks pretty damn good for only $54 million compared to some of the bigger budget movies.
I do have some comment on that, actually.
Give me some comments on it then, Daniel.
All right, so I agree it does look good, but it also feels very small, the movie. There's only like 2 or 3 real set pieces going on here, and it's part of how the narrative kind of bends over itself, like in the Pulp Fiction-y, Memento kind of way, where the story weaves within its own self, so that it extends a 2-hour movie, but it's really only like 3 or 4 sets. And in a way, it makes it feel like a very insular movie. Like the universe does not feel big to me, but I know there were nods to the Avengers, X-Men, etc., like periphery type stuff. So someone who's familiar with the source material and the overall scope of things would get a sense of it being bigger than that. But as an isolated individual movie, even though it stands alone, it still feels like they were budgeting very carefully. Like, okay, we've got so much money we can throw at this thing. We're a little bit under-budgeted, understaffed, bureaucratic style, so let's make the most of it. And I think they succeeded. I think that it works pretty well. But it felt to me like, oh, they are on the bridge, and then this helicarrier and like a bar scene and some street scenes, and that's it.
Yep. You've perfectly described the movie. You're absolutely right. Yeah, I think they just, they had a budget, what they wanted to do. And I believe, as I recall, they had to cut 2 different big budget like action scenes when they were making this movie because they just didn't have the money for it. So yeah, you're right. It does feel kind of small, but it's basically your superhero origin story. And I would rather that it be. I mean, I don't know. Rather, I think they did a really good job for what they had. So, in fact, okay, I'll say it this way. I would rather they tell a singular, cohesive story than in the typical Marvel fashion of, hey, we're going to tell a story about Thor. Oh, remember Doctor Strange? Here's Doctor Strange. Remember Doctor Strange? He's in this movie, too, for some reason. Oh, remember Tony Stark? We got Tony Stark, too. He's in this movie, too. Spider-Man? You love Spider-Man. He's in this movie, too, for like 2 seconds. Oh, come on. It's a whole lot of fan service in a lot of those movies, and I'm not complaining. I mean, those Marvel movies are fantastic for the most part. But they do kind of remind you over and over again, like, hey, what else do we got? Now, part of that you could say, hey, this makes sense for the story. It would make sense for Thor to seek out Doctor Strange here because Doctor Strange is an expert in blah, blah, blah. Or it would make sense for them to reference the larger universe because these things also exist, and it would be strange if they didn't reference the larger universe. But a lot of it is just comes down to, did we really need to see Doctor Strange there? Did we really? Or is it just kind of fan service-y stuff? And there's a fine line there, treading the line between, is this necessary for the story, or are we just like kind of flexing our big Marvel dick here? Yeah.
Awkward. Cockshot. Gratuitous, my slim brown friend. So I want to talk about the opening credit scene because you made reference to it in the I don't know if it was fan footage. I did read on the history a little bit of this. It was some test footage that was put together and then got shot down by Fox, and then somebody leaked it. Reynolds apparently didn't take credit for leaking it, but he did say that the leak made this movie actually happen. Yeah. But that opening scene where they have the titles mixed in with this expansive 3D CGI like frozen moment in time in this car crash fight is pretty awesome, with the asshats, the overpaid jerk, the British villain, the hot chick, made by a bunch of dummies, that kind of thing. I really enjoyed that. It was pretty funny.
Oh, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it, because usually it seems our senses of humor and what we enjoy is like slipping more and more apart as we get older. So I'm glad that you also enjoyed that. Yeah, I thought it was great. It was fairly unique for the any kind of a movie to go out and just make fun of the entire production team. So that was good. And then, the whole time, Reynolds is just totally tongue-in-cheek about it. So this is just all super, super true to the character. If you know the Deadpool character at all, he's all about just making jokes about every single thing, constantly referencing himself, the wider world, any kind of inconsistencies the fans might might make up or discover or figure out. He'll be right on top of it, saying it's dumb and stupid. Or, it was just a very true to the character movie that you just was a breath of fresh air, honestly, in terms of what it was. Now, it was also a fairly standard, plot-wise, a fairly standard origin story. It wasn't doing a whole lot of tricks, which is why I appreciated the out-of-sequence storytelling, which was good, which I enjoyed.
Yeah, I think they needed that folded narrative to kind of break up the really dark parts from the funny parts. Because if it had been more linear, you go to a pretty dark place for a long time, right in the middle there.
Yeah, where he's getting cancer and they're breaking up and he's leaving her, and then there's this extended torture sequences and then he's just sad sack guy for a long time, not having the guts to go after his girl. Now, did that ring true to you? Because I know there's been a fair amount of criticism saying, "Are you kidding me? Your guys' love transcended looks. Just go get her." But the movie did try a fair amount to show how horrifying he looked. Like he's walking on the street and everybody makes comments about how terrifying he looks and how painful it must have looked and whatever. And then the bartender character spends a good minute saying how horrifying he looks.
Yeah, I really enjoyed T.J. Miller, I think is the guy's name. He was a good comedic partner for those bits.
Mm-hmm.
And I had read that they wrote, a half dozen jokes for each scene and then continued shooting and let them ad-lib a fair amount. And Reynolds would throw in some other, self-deprecating or fourth wall breaking type stuff. One of them that was totally ad-libbed was when he was visiting the mansion, the X-Mansion. And he says, "Oh, there's only 2 of you here? I guess the studio couldn't afford more X-Men," or something.
That's a really strong line, too. If that was completely ad-libbed, kudos to Reynolds.
Totally funny stuff. But back to your, their love would have transcended that. I can totally see. I mean, it's not like the strongest storyline, but I could see that being he's afraid to approach her again. Because he's also very much like, if I'm going to die from this cancer thing, I don't want her to be there for that. I don't want to put her through that. It reminded me of in Find Me Guilty, where Jackie didn't want his wife there, right, or something like that, at the trial. And I also just watched the Vince Vaughn movie, The Brawl in Cell Block 99. He does a similar thing where he's going through a court proceeding and he knows that he's, going to get put to prison. So he's like, don't show up for this because I don't want to put you through it.
Okay, so there's that. But at no point in the movie do we get the idea that, I believe her name is Vanessa, right? Vanessa?
Sounds right.
That Vanessa is, shallow, or that she is super worried about, she never makes a comment that so-and-so isn't attractive and she couldn't be with an unattractive person, which would have given Reynolds' character that, just a little hint she's kind of shallow. She wouldn't, whatever.
So some little nugget or foreshadow type thing, that could be interpreted that way, but then she didn't really mean it that way. So something to
yes, exactly.
Drive the plot, might further the plot, like they make reference to in the bar scene, which is hilarious. Some guy came looking for you. It might further the plot.
Yes. Now, I don't know if T.J. Miller is aware, his character is also self-aware. I don't know, or if that was just a good line that somebody might say otherwise. But I don't know. There's just a million little funny lines in this movie. So how much did you laugh at this movie? Because this ultimately will succeed on whether or not it made you laugh. And when I first watched this movie, I was just hysterically crying, just hysterics. There were multiple times where I was laughing out loud. I had to watch the movie 2 times just to get all the jokes because I was laughing too hard the first time. So How was it for you? Was this really, really funny? Was pretty funny? I mean, what kind of a scale, 1 to 10, how funny was this movie for you?
It is funny, but mostly because of how kind of sarcastic and as kind of a jerk that Ryan Reynolds is, and I think I was sort of like that a bit more in my younger days. Now that I got kids and I'm a little older, it's like, okay, I can only handle that for so long. like
your younger self would be insufferable to you. Is that what you're saying?
Oh yes, oh God, yes. And I think hanging out with Deadpool, I'd be like, all right, dude, I can only hang out for like 10 minutes. I gotta go.
Fair enough.
Let's talk about some of the moments, if you don't mind, and I'm not stealing your thunder here, that were like moral dilemmas for me that I wanted to talk to you about.
Yes.
Now, I wrote down, quote, technically this is a murder, and I forget exactly what that's related to, but I think it had to do with the pizza delivery guy, stalker guy, who was delivering pizza to this one dude's house, and Ryan Reynolds was like assaulting, threatening the homeowner, but then he was really after the pizza guy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recall what the technically this is a murder scene, what that line was about? Because I put 3 question marks behind it because I'm like, well, is it? Oh, it was because he was he defended himself against someone else attacking him. Oh, it's the freeway scene. Okay. Freeway scene, and then he cut.
The shish kebab scene.
Yes. He says, technically, this is a murder. No, it was not technically a murder because the guy was coming at you with knives, right?
Well, they were defending. They were just driving down the road.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah. So he initiated.
And he attacked them.
Okay.
I mean, this is, it gets into this. Rewatching this movie, up until the point at which Ajax reveals that they are a super slave maker, and that he was going to be fitted with a control collar and turned into like a super slave and do the bidding of whoever for whatever purpose. Up to that point, I was full on board with the Deadpool is this horrific murderer guy. Now, Deadpool, in the very beginning of the movie, when he's intimidating the pizza guy, he says, I'm not a hero. I'm a bad guy who intimidates and hurts worse guys for money. So the whole movie, he's saying he's not a hero, which I pretty much fully on board with. He is not a hero. He is like an anti-hero kind of guy who hurts other bad people. Kind of like
he's sort of like a DRO, right? He's sort of like a dispute resolution organization. The Sister Margaret's Bar, is that what they call it? It's like it's all these mercenary types, like taking jobs. It's private justice, right?
It is. Private justice, absolutely right. And not to say that it's necessarily super moral or the things that he does. I mean, the guy, he, threatens with murder a guy that is, quote, stalking somebody. Now, I don't know. We're not given the details of what the kid was doing. In fact, even Deadpool says, well, it's just some light stalking. I've done worse back in the day. So, how threatening was it? What exactly did we do? We don't know. But probably getting threatened with murder is probably a bit step over the line.
Well, the guy's house he threatened with murder.
Yeah.
So before it was revealed that it's the pizza guy he's actually after, it looks like he's after the guy who owns the house, and he takes the guy's wallet and he says, well, I'm keeping the wallet because you kind of gave it to me. He gave it to you under duress when he thought you were robbing him and threatening to kill him.
At gunpoint, yeah, exactly.
It's like you were taxing the guy.
Yeah, it's like, well, I'm going to stick a gun in your face, and then you're going to give me your wallet, and then I'm like, well, I'm going to keep the wallet because you gave it to me. It's a totally statist argument for taxation.
Oh, I'm actually not after you, but you kind of gave it to me, so, I'm going to keep it.
Yeah, I'm just going to keep it. So, yeah, he's definitely a flawed moral character, in my view. Now, I was then on board because, he enters into this voluntary relationship where he's like, okay, you guys can cure me of this cancer, at least you can try, and I'm going to voluntarily go along with it. Up until the point at which Ajax goes, ha-ha, I wasn't really going to turn you into anything. I'm not going to really cure you, or if I do cure you, it's fine, whatever. But once I do cure you, you're going to be a super slave. Now, of course, at that point, then I'm fully on board with what Deadpool does to escape. But I don't know about the whole freeway scene and the murder. Is Deadpool the aggressor there?
Well, it's payback at that point. I mean, because of the folded narrative, it's hard to place it in your head. But this is after all this stuff has been revealed to him, and he worked his way through the gang, killing a bunch of people, getting information to find out where Ajax was, and I guess which highway he was going to be driving on at that particular moment. And he takes
he got the information.
Takes a cab to get there and steals the cab fare, by the way.
Yes, he does.
How about a high five?
How about a crisp high five? That'll do it, right?
But
your time and labor, that's all it's worth.
Yeah, so I want to say that he was going after Ajax, who had wronged him very much so and left him for dead, attempted to murder him, and he couldn't go to the cops. He was a mercenary type anyway, and he's been imbued with superpowers. So, but also he did not intend to kill Ajax because Ajax had been whispering sweet nothings into his ear every time he was in mortal danger, where he would say, "I'm the only one who can cure you and make you look not like an ugly, like overcooked hot dog."
Yes. So he wasn't going to kill Ajax, but he was going to kill everybody else that was, hanging out with Ajax, that was working for Ajax.
In a defensive capacity or security detail type capacity. So, I don't know, they were like hired on to defend him and be shot or stabbed or whatever, kebabbed for him. I don't know. It is a little bit of a conundrum figuring out exactly. But I do feel like Deadpool had every reason to go after Ajax, right?
I would say that he has some reason to go after Ajax. I mean, one, he could go after them in defense of the others, of all these people that are being turned into these super slaves. But he didn't. He didn't care about that. He could have, but he didn't. But two, he could have wanted some justice, for the act of aggression that Ajax committed against him. They had a contract that was under certain terms, I assume. We're not given the details of that contract when he volunteers to, be a part of this program. I assume he's told something.
Did you get Did you catch the? This is a private facility, and it was like implying that it's more evil.
Yeah, for sure. This is a private facility. We make like super slaves here, because that's what people do in private facilities. Daniel.
Yeah, he says
because government facilities, they're immune from that kind of thing.
Yeah, this is exactly what I wrote down the quote. This workshop is not a government program. It's a private institution that turns reclamation projects like yourself into men of extraordinary abilities. And then he says, "You're going to leave me here with less angry Rosie O'Donnell."
That's a good joke.
Oh man. So anyway, yeah, they do demon. They almost like say, "Oh, if it were a government facility, this would be fine."
Yeah, almost.
Because it's private, it's evil.
Yeah, they make well, and then also Ajax is also kind of demonized as this arms dealer, right? Because he's dealing arms to some other people, and it's kind of made understood that either he's selling arms to both sides or just one side. We're not sure, but we're essentially told that he's evil because he's selling weapons. And I have my issues with the military-industrial complex. Don't get me wrong. But if you're trying to make the argument that weapons themselves are immoral and that selling them is immoral, then I have serious issue with that, because everybody has a right to self-defense. I don't care who you are, and you have a right to be armed as well. So,
yeah, and there's actually a really great scene in the bar when Ajax and Angel Dust go in there seeking out Wade, what's his last name? Wade Wilson, and they threaten the bartender, TJ, or AJ?
Yeah, whatever.
And everyone in the bar pulls their piece and is like, "No, you're not going to fucking do that."
Yep.
I mean, that's
right.
that's how you defend shit right there,
That's right. Somebody's acting the fool, and there's like a whole bunch of guns get shoved in their face. Like, no, you're not doing that, buddy. Not here. Take your shit elsewhere. Yeah, it's a kind of a mixed message, right? Because this is a movie where guns save people, act defensively, are good, but then they're also evil when Ajax does them. But then they're good again when they're in Deadpool's hands. It's, it's a real mixed message.
Oh, and speaking of the budget, the scene where he's going to the helicarrier and he forgot his bag of weapons in the car, in the cab?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They did that because they didn't have enough budget money to do a big shootout at the end.
Nice. I love it. Make a fun of it. Make a joke of it. Now, when Ajax kidnaps Vanessa, I'm fully on board with Deadpool, rescuing her. Fully on board with that, by whatever means necessary. Let's see what else I was going to say. What about the little subplot with Dopinder and Bantu, and how Wade is championing on him kidnapping Bantu and killing him?
Yeah, he's sort of doing the no, you should never do anything bad, but really kill him. But don't do this, but really do it. That kind of a thing. It reminded me of, how Hillary Clinton got caught saying, "Oh, well, I have a public thing I can say, and then a private thing I can say," like in paid-for speaking engagements. It was pretty.
Yeah,
funny.
The one time she was honest. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so, I thought him advocating that he actually do this like incredibly violent thing to get back Gita was bad advice. Very bad advice.
Yes, bad advice. Very deplorable advice from Mr. Poole. Kind of in line with the character, but yeah, can't support him on that with my principles.
All right, so one thing I wanted to bring up was, remember when he's like, Ajax escapes on the highway, and then he gets pissed off at Colossus. Deadpool does.
Mm-hmm.
So they do this, it's just a flesh wound scene, the Monty Python thing, where he punches Colossus, breaks his hand, punches him again, breaks his hand, spin kicks him, breaks his ankle, and then gets handcuffed to Colossus and cuts his own hand off.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a pretty stellar nod to the Black Knight. I think it's the Black Knight. Is that right? The Knights of Ni?
Yep, the Black Knight. Mm-hmm. 'Tis but a flesh wound. All dinosaurs fear the mighty T-Rex.
Help! I'm being repressed.
Yeah, man. There's all kinds of great stuff in this movie, and I'm hoping that Deadpool 2 carries on and carries forth. By all accounts, it's as funny as the original. Now, the same director isn't with us, so I don't know how this new director's going to do, but we'll see, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, now that movie's coming out like right now, or it just came out, or it's about to come out, hence why we're doing this one now. lastnighters.com/20, everyone. So, we're trying to get that wave, that viral, astro-turfed viral campaign stuff. Maybe we'll show up higher on search results, perhaps.
You never know.
I did want to throw out a couple of throwaway lines at you. Not to say the word throw too many times, but I like when he says Fat Gandalf, when he tells that one bar patron to, back the fuck off. And then he says another throwaway line like, living to 102 and then dying like Detroit.
Like the city of Detroit, yep.
And I just want to mention that the reason Detroit is dying is because of the heavy hand of government. They have the highest per capita or per student budget for school and the lowest test results. They've had, I don't want to sound like super partisan or anything, but they've had do-gooder types, corrupt do-gooder types in the positions of power in the city government and in the county for the last 50 years, and it has fallen to shit. And they've tried to do all of the programs that all the progressives and all of the left-wingers and Seattle's trying to do right now, put into place. And that is why Detroit died. And, he just makes mention of it, but I just thought that would be like an interesting point. A guy that we listen to, Stefan Molyneux, has a YouTube video about Detroit that's worth watching, worth checking out. He goes through all the stats and some of the reasons behind it. But do you have any comment to that before we move on?
I just wish I knew more about it. I mean, I know that these city councils do everything they can to appease like the progressive mentality of we must do more, we must always do more, we almost always need more resources to do more, when they don't realize that their own policies are failed and flawed from the get-go. And it's always taking a new government flawed policy to fix the old government flawed policies that just create more and more and more and more problems, and you just dig yourself deeper and deeper into a hole. I mean, Seattle is on the verge of kicking out yet another giant corporation that they kind of grew up in its womb. I mean, we're talking about Amazon and maybe even Starbucks, who knows. But they essentially kicked out Boeing back in the day, and who knows what will happen now, now that they've instituted this $275 a head tax on corporations that make, I think, $20 million or more a year.
Yeah, what a compromise. From zero tax like that to, we want to do $550. Let's just do $275. Yeah, and they did it that way so that they could get the unanimous 6 votes required so that the mayor couldn't veto it. Right, and all of these things are just foot in the door anyway. Like, as soon as that tax is in place, guess what? It's going to go up, right? That's what's going to happen.
Oh, yeah, there's nothing so temporary or so permanent as a temporary government action. It's only the beginning, and it's so anti-business that I'm actively rooting for Amazon to grow some balls, and hopefully it'll make financial sense for them to just bail. And I can't wait to hear the caterwauling and the screaming and the wailing of how evil Amazon is for leaving. It seems like no matter what successful people do, whether they provide value for people or they leave, they're always doing something evil. Like, you complain endlessly when they're there, and then when they've had enough and they leave, then you complain that they leave. You cannot win. You cannot win, Daniel. Success.
Oh, I know, yeah. And it's really hard to be successful, by the way. And that is why, all right, I don't want to rant, but I will for a moment. That is why so many people who advocate for these types of policies, they're afraid of what would happen to them in a free market. because they don't have skills and they don't have certain things that they think would be successful in that type of environment. So then they demonize people who are successful and providing value to others, and they demand more from them. In fact, the city council member who was promoting all of this nonsense was saying that Amazon was being the aggressor and the violent bully by not continuing the construction of their, some of their buildings downtown under threat of, this millions of dollars of additional tax that would have to be extorted from them. They were saying that Amazon was doing the extortion. It's crazy. It's so ridiculous. And for anyone to advocate for these types of things, you just know that they've never tried to run a business. They've never been in a position to where they've had to deal with all these regulations and taxes and other impediments to providing value to their fellow man. I, myself, am trying to be an Amazon FBA seller, and I've got an LLC and a sales reseller certificate and some training and all these things, and you guys can learn about that at blacken.gold /FBA if you want to learn about the training I'm doing. But it is incredibly difficult, all the bureaucratic hoops and bullshit you have to go through, and it's just it's a clear demarcation in who has experience having to deal with it on the receiving end and those who have no fucking clue and yet are advocating for bullshit.
Yeah, it is 1984 come to life when a group of people threaten to rob another person who is doing something, building a building, and then that person goes, oh, so if I'm going to be robbed if I stay here, so I'm going to stop building this building and I'm going to leave. And then the people that are about to rob him go, you're just being a bully. You're just some kind of thug bully who doesn't want to give me your money. What upside-down world do we live in where this kind of nonsense not only gets said one time, but it gets repeated, and people hear it, and it makes sense to them, and then they repeat it. There were photographs taken at these town hall events by people holding up signs saying Jeff Bezos is a bully. Multiple people had these signs. These are like printed out and like made, like manufactured, not just like one crazy person made a sign. We're talking like this is an idea that took hold in the root of people's minds.
There's a budget for this.
There is a budget. What kind of 4-year-old listens to this and goes, yeah, that makes sense? I mean, I hate to be that pedantic asshole who just like thinks other people that think different things than him are stupid. But really, what kind of backwards-ass mental gymnastics do you have to do to see the person being extorted as the bully? Like the kid getting robbed of his lunch money is the bully thug because he doesn't want to give the big guy who's demanding his money his lunch money. Like, there's a bully in school. I know I'm just belaboring, kicking this dead horse. But there's a bully in school, and he sees this little kid, and he's like, give me your lunch money. And the kid's like, no, I'm just going to leave. And the bully's like, you're just being a bully, leaving without giving me your money. What upside-down kind of world do we live in, Daniel? All
right, I think it's going to take maximum effort on our part to get back to the movie here.
Oh, it's just so frustrating. So frustrating.
Oh, yes. I agree. And it's a 200-pound sack of assholes named Francis or progressives, socialist types who just want to ruin it for everybody, man. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. It's hard enough to start a business with all the entrenched business who go to government to try and enact regulations to prevent competition. And that's something that I'm also dealing with currently right now.
Oh, do tell.
Oh, well, we've been trying to start this food business. But in order to do any kind of food preparation, you have to have your kitchen approved, and it needs to meet certain regulations. Or you need to prepare all your food in an officially approved kitchen that has to have, 3 sinks, and it has to have a faucet with, a separate faucet with certain, sewage facilities, and then another sink for the mop and all that kind of stuff. There's just all sorts of regulations. All you're trying to do is to say make some tacos and then take them to a place and sell some tacos. You can't just do that in this country. There's all these entrenched regulations where you have to be all these approved facilities that, of course, because if you were to actually make food for the public in the same kitchen that you make your own food in, you'd probably just, murder everybody that you try to make food for. Because, you're constantly killing yourself when you're making the food in that exact same kitchen. Like you're just murdering your family, right? It makes sense. So we're having to deal with that, so it might not even happen. It just might not even be worth it because it's either build an entire kitchen with 3 sinks and all these other regulations or rent out a kitchen to do the prep and then maintain the food at certain temperatures while you transport it to the place of sale. So not only you have to buy the food, take it to this kitchen, and then you have to either sell it the exact same day or, store it in a certain way so that it can then be brought over. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself, but there are all kinds of regulations that just prevent competition. And it's just the nature of, entrenched corporations bending the ear of government, saying, well, you know what safe is? Safe is the way we do things. And that anybody who wants to compete with us needs to do it the exact same way, with the same costs, even though we're able to absorb those costs because, well, one, we've already spent those costs. And we don't want to actually have to compete against any kind of new competition. So let's just do it this way, because this is the safe, approved way.
It sounds to me like a workshop that makes super slaves. This bureaucratic workshop here.
Anyway, I know we're getting away from the movie. Let's get back to the movie.
All right. So I have a weird question. So this mutation can heal injury and cancer, but not skin cells, or not non-disfigured skin cells. But when he has the baby hand, it looks pretty, overcooked sausage free. So I'm a little bit confused on that, because he looks like a burn victim, and he's all self-conscious, but it seems like his healing powers would, maybe take care of that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, if you're thinking too hard about the science behind the Deadpool character, I think you're doing it wrong. Especially if you're thinking about any kind of superhero character as, if you think about it too scientifically, there's just no way. Like, where does all the mass come from for the Tony Stark, for all the energy in the Iron Man suit? There's just not enough mass there for there to be all that energy there. There's Thor, how does he have so much strength in such a tiny little body? Or even the Hulk, he can supposedly bench press like 100 tons. It's kind of hilarious, but
But it's comics. It's comics, so you can do that.
Yeah, because comic books, Daniel. So you're right. I mean, what if you were to cut him in half? Would each side regrow? Like
that was Ajax's thing. Like, I'm going to cut him in so many pieces that there's nothing to regrow.
So his parts will have to regrow him. And then Deadpool was like, "Yeah, that's good. Good line. Good point. It really was good one."
Anyway, I thought that was weird. And then you'd made mention of the comments being made by people on the street about how disfigured he was and how gross he was looking.
Yeah.
I have a hard time believing that would actually happen. I don't know. Maybe I'm living in some fantasy land here, but I think that most people don't say shit to people who have some kind of disfigurement. I don't know. 100%.
The only people who would say anything would be children, and then the mothers would be like, "Oh, that's not a nice thing to say. You need to apologize," or "Shush, let's go."
100%. I'm sure there's some assholes out there, for sure. I mean, they're everywhere. But
maybe somebody's drunk and it would be like, "Oh my God, you're ugly," but that just never happens. People are way too polite. Not too polite, but they're polite and they're understanding of the horror things. Like even one lady, I think in the movie, was like, "Oh, that looked like it was really painful." So I think that Wade Wilson and the Vanessa character, their relationship was way too strong. It was clearly depicted them as being totally in love with each other and having a connection beyond just the physical. And that him getting ugly all of a sudden would not have mattered. And clearly it didn't, because at the very end of the movie, she takes like 30 seconds to get over how he looks. So, but, if you need a plot device, go ahead, whatever you need. I'm okay with it. It's not the best thing in the world. It's not the greatest thing ever. It's not the best plot device ever. But if that is what can get me a Deadpool movie, if you have to have that plot device in order to get me a really funny Deadpool movie, I'll take it every time.
Yeah, and that probably explains why the people on the street were saying those things. It was to play up that, he's reluctant to go and approach her because of his
his self-doubt. Right, exactly. Play up his self-doubt so that we can kind of at least believe it a little bit, enough for the movie. Because in reality, we'd be like, who cares? I mean, sure, at least go check it out. I mean, yes, it would hurt, but it hurt way more if she hooked up with some other guy and you're still sitting there stalking her. How painful would that be?
Yeah, then the next Wade Wilson's gonna approach you delivering pizza and be like, "All right, you need to stop chasing her around."
Right. Hey, man. California Raisin, you need to get out of here.
You look like an avocado had sex with an older avocado and had avocado babies or something. That's good stuff. Another nod to another film I thought was pretty funny was the Austin Powers steamroller scene replayed with the Zamboni, where he's super far away from the guy and he's like, "You're gonna get killed by a Zamboni. This is going super slow."
Yeah, that was actually the Force Awakens scene, the entire movie recreated in Zamboni form. There's like a super slow motion chase of the Empire chasing the rebels.
You mean Jedi? Last Jedi?
Yes. Man, I just said the wrong thing. Yep, you're right. Last Jedi. Complete plot of the Last Jedi. In Zamboni form. Yeah, good.
And probably better and over in like a montage.
Yeah, it's better. Plus, it's got the Team Head Kick song going. Baller.
Oh, man. So there's another thing that I thought was hilarious right after that, where it's still in the montage, and he's, like, fighting some girls, some women, and he's like, is it sexist to hit you, or is it sexist to not hit you? Because if I don't hit you, then I'm treating you different because you're a woman. But if I hit you, then I'm, some kind of, I'm picking on a woman or whatever. I thought that was a pretty funny SJW nod.
Oh, hell yes. Absolutely, man. Yeah, that is the SJW dilemma, right? That's the progressive dilemma. Do I protect this woman? Do I white knight for this woman? Or do I recognize that she is a full and complete human being and is capable of fighting her own battles? What do I do? It's good stuff.
It takes a maximum effort to figure that one out. Another thing I liked was the IKEA furniture stuff with the blind woman.
Did you?
Al is her name?
Yeah.
Where they're saying, it's the Hotterfussel, or the Hackenberger, or whatever, the names are. I mean, everyone who's ever built IKEA furniture knows what that's all about. And so they're playing to that subgenre audience, the people who've experienced IKEA furniture. I just love it. It's great.
Awesome. I'm glad that this is hitting hard on you. I appreciated Al's love of cocaine.
And his joke about it. All right, there's 150 pounds of cocaine hidden in here, but also the cure to blindness.
Yep. Good luck. So good. Hashtag drive-by.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
such a dick.
There's just so many good little throwaway lines. That's why it's dense with jokes. It's just a dense movie.
So speaking of Dick, when he was doing the nude scenes of him being a California raisin, he did have a prosthetic dick that was also done up like that, though you don't see it in the film. But they did it to make it more real or more authentic.
Nice for when he was actually filming those scenes and for the cast and everything. Good
yeah,
stuff.
but they had to shoot it carefully to like not display too much, because it was R-rated, but they didn't want to go too far, I suppose.
You can't actually show cocks.
Speaking of going too far, what do you think of Stan Lee doing a cameo as a strip club DJ? I thought that was pretty awesome.
Oh yeah, dude. Anytime they can show me Stan Lee in a cameo that they haven't shown me before, I enjoy it. I mean, this wasn't my favorite Stan Lee cameo, but he's always a highlight of the movie. Not necessarily like a highlight of the movie, but you know what I mean? Like, every time you see him, you're like, hey, I appreciate that. So, yeah, and then this movie squeezing him in as a strip club DJ was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that dude's like 100 now. It's amazing that he's still out kicking, and he had a Stan Lee's like Amazing People or Marvelous People or something, like it's a Netflix show or something. And I think you and I watched where there was a guy who could accurately shoot a revolver and like pop all these balloons at like 30 feet in 2.3 seconds from his hip. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yeah, he worked with, it wasn't too long ago, it's maybe like 10 years ago. And yeah, he worked with a crew of people, made a TV show with showing all kinds of like kind of Guinness World Record-y type people. And yeah, that revolver guy, pretty damn amazing.
All right.
But yeah, Stan Lee he's a legend, man. What do you want? I mean, he's over 90, he's almost 100, and they're still kind of using him for different stuff. I heard that I don't know if this is true or not. Don't take my word for it. But I heard that they went in and they recorded a whole bunch of him doing different cameos, so they could kind of put him in future movies after he dies. So I think that's totally in character, and I totally support that. There has been some talk lately of abuse, of him being abused by people and kind of exploited, like wheeling him out to sign autographs and stuff for a bunch of money, and like he doesn't want to be there and stuff like that. And hopefully that stuff's really overblown and not really happening. I don't know, but Stan Lee is a beloved character in the comic book world, and I can't help but root for the guy.
Yeah, and I think it's a good plan they have the next, 10 years of movies mapped out. So they know the general, like, okay, we're going to do this X-Men movie, this Avengers movie, this Iron Man, this Hulk, this whatever. So they can record him. I mean, you saw in Last Jedi where they plugged in young Leia, or was that in Force Awakens? There was one where they
young Leia
brought it back.
She was in that Rogue One.
Oh, that's right. And then in Blade Runner 2049, they recreated Sean Young Sean Young for Blade Runner.
Who's Young Sean One?
Sean Young. She was the what's her bucket?
Oh, the woman he loves?
Yeah, the love interest.
Yeah. Rebecca or something? I don't know.
Yeah, we did that movie. And yeah.
Well, apparently we didn't do a very good job in that movie. That's the one movie that a lot of the TWE kind of like shit on us for.
Yeah, and we even did a boys' night out on it. But, I mean, we got so much going on, you know.
The way it goes. Can't win them all, people.
So, speaking of plot holes.
Uh-oh.
What is the deal with them kidnapping his girlfriend to lure him? Because I just got to say, but why? Deadpool's been looking for them for 2 or 3 years. So it makes no sense.
Other than they think it's a trap and then they need, some way to kill him because he really is super duper hard to kill. I mean, this is a character who's had his head cut off multiple times. He's been cut into multiple pieces in the comic books just over and over and over and over again, and he always regrows. So if you're really trying to kill him, you probably need some sort of a plan. I don't know exactly what his plan was because all he really had was a bunch of Hydra agents, and I really appreciated the appearance of Hydra Bob.
Oh, yeah. Hey, man, how you been? Oh, yeah. How are the kids?
Yeah, Hydra Bob.
Still making that casserole?
Yeah, Hydra Bob is apparently, goes back quite a ways in the comic books, so him appearing in the movie was pretty fun. So, yeah, we don't know what exactly Ajax's plan was, maybe to get Wade back in the chamber, the hyperbaric chamber thing. And hyperbaric, I understand, is the wrong word. But I don't know what else you would call it, the torture chamber thing. Or maybe just like explode him, but we don't really see that. We don't really get to see what Ajax's plan was. All we see are that his aircraft carrier is surrounded by soldiers and that he's got his girlfriend kind of like tied up like Donkey Kong style, like at the top of the ladder. And then Wade shows up with Colossus and Negasonic, and there's a fight. So, yeah, I guess, to your point, you're right. It would have made more sense if Ajax actually did have some sort of trap that Wade would then fall into and then would have to escape. That would make way more sense for the story of the show, the movie. Or he's rescued by Vanessa or Negasonic or Colossus or Dopinder or somebody.
Right, yeah. It needed something else right there because it felt like that third act was just, all right, we're just going to do a bunch of action, but no real reason. And
right.
To that end, I want to ask you about the Angel versus Colossus because it seemed like their relative abilities to each other, like how strong they were in relation to each other, kept fluctuating. Because initially, Angel's like throwing around Colossus like he's nothing. And then the next moment, Colossus is able to fight back, and then Angel Dust goes back to being so overpowering. It didn't make sense to me. I was like, oh, well, who's stronger? And do you get what I'm saying here?
I get what you're saying. I could say I'm not going to explain it away by saying movie fight, and you can't just have one character destroy the other one. But I will say that I like the idea of two superpowered characters just fighting because it happens in comic books all the time, and it doesn't happen so much in movies, where you're dealing with characters that can punch, mountains. Like Hulk could pick up one of the pyramids of Giza. You're talking about a character that if he hits you, you would go flying literally miles. So if two of those characters were fighting each other, you would have one of them land a punch and the other one would just fly for a few miles. And then they'd come back together, and then one of them would land another blow, and the other one would fly a couple of miles. It would really be kind of like two balls kind of bouncing off each other.
Well, this is like Man of Steel, which we talked about last year, and we didn't like it in that. Because you're like, what's the fucking point?
I don't remember that? Exactly.
They destroyed the whole, Metropolis City, throwing each other around through buildings and whatnot. And we're like,
well, yeah. Well, I don't like it when you're trying. Well, yeah, for sure. Superman trying to defend the city, and he's just throwing Zod through buildings, knowing that he's going to do 0 damage to Zod, but a ton of damage to the building, potentially full of people. Yeah, absolutely. That's garbage. But I do appreciate the fact that these are two supremely, intensely strong people, and when you punch a guy, he doesn't just fall to the ground 2 feet away. He flies like miles because you are so super strong. So that's my little bit on that, although I enjoyed the fight. I want to say that this is easily my favorite rendition of Colossus, not even close. There are X-Men movies in the past where Colossus kind of appears for maybe a brief second or two, and he's just given nothing. He doesn't have an accent. He's like small. This is like the large, big Colossus guy who's like a big Iron Giant dude.
From the comics.
From the comics. And he's like a gentle giant. He likes art. He's just he doesn't want to be a big fighter warrior guy, but he does appreciate being a hero when he gets a chance to do that kind of stuff. So,
and he's kind of a bitch.
How dare you? How dare you? Unbelievable.
He was so annoying. He's like, Wade, join us on the good side. Spare your enemy. Be the hero you want to be. It's only the fairest few moments in your life where you actually differentiate yourself as a hero.
Listen, hang on. Yes, Colossus is being a bit of a child. He's not really realizing the life that Wade Wilson has lived and the life that, who Wade Wilson is as a character. He's like living in some kind of fantasy land where all he has to do is say the right words, and all of a sudden Wade Wilson is going to turn around and be a good person. Yes, I agree. He's completely naive and idealistic. But as an X-Man, as Colossus, he was aces. Now, what he's given to do in this movie, not the greatest. Like you said. He's a bit naive, whatever. But as far as representation in terms of, is this the best representation of this character of all time? By far, like leaps and bounds. This is like when Hulk appeared in the first Avengers movie. Just leaps and bounds better than any Hulk before him. And then in Spider-Man in Civil War, just leaps and bounds better than any Spider-Man before. Anyway.
All right.
Let's wrap this up.
That's good enough, yes. Let's wrap this one up. So overall, I did enjoy this movie. And let's talk about tears jerked just for a moment, and then we'll do our final summary and review.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So how many tears got jerked out of you, sir?
Well, it all revolves around the relationship with Vanessa, and assuming that's her name. And there's some bits in the beginning of their relationship where the writing is a bit too perfect. It's a bit too sharp and on the nose, and it's not quite acted quite naturally.
Oh, the outdoing each other for how shitty their childhoods were?
That's part of it, but a lot of those scenes where they're interacting and talking to each other, and it's just a little bit too sharp and funny and witty, and it's almost like these two characters were written down by some writer perfectly beforehand. And now they're just saying their lines robotically almost. I'm not saying that they're bad actors. I'm just saying that for me, their relationship was just a little bit too much perfect. Now, of course, they didn't have a whole lot of time to establish this romance. So if you're going to do that, I think they did a pretty good job. Now, if you believe and you're on board with the romance, then you get some tears jerked, I think, at the end.
It was a Valentine's movie.
It was a Valentine's movie. It was a romance movie. Yeah, I think I got some tears jerked at the end when she's like upset at him for leaving. She's like, you left me. Why did you do that? You're an asshole. How could you? So that, yeah, I mean, I hate to give it a number value. I'm just going to say that there was some emotional component that held the story together for me. I'm not going to say it's like the most emotional movie ever, but there was enough of it there for me.
All right, so it's not EC10. It's not like Equilibrium-style band, but there's enough there to like keep the story moving.
For me, yeah, absolutely. It worked. The romance worked enough for me so that I believed it, or at least I went along for the ride when I could understand her emotional feelings of betrayal, and I was on board with that. It's not like I just like poo-pooed and like this is all dumb. So I was on board.
Okay, yeah, I'll agree with you. It was just enough there to keep the story going and enough to make Wade not feel like he could approach her, because like I did like the I don't want to put you through what I'm going to go through. That sort of sacrifice.
The shit show and
yeah, there's tickets to the shit show and I don't want you redeeming it or whatever. Because that would be a very, very difficult thing, and especially if you care so much about that person, you don't want to put them through that. But reversely, or same alternate side of that coin, that person would definitely want to be there for you, like in that type of relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah, I thought he was stealing away her ability to, help him through whatever he's going through. You're kind of like robbing her of that experience that you two would be sharing together. And I can see both sides of it, but I would fall on the Vanessa side of how dare you? How dare you think so little of me that I wouldn't want to be there for you for this? Because I'm fully on board with this relationship. I'm so in love. I want to be a part of everything you do, and we are a team in this, and how dare you break up the team?
Right, and for him to not even bring up this offer of being cured before he knew it was deceitful, I find that sort of fuzzy, right? Because like if he's willing to try anything, and there was a deleted scene where he had gone to Nepal and gone to the Philippines and gone to Mexico, you'd think that he might mention, hey, there's this other thing.
Yeah, Vanessa, hey, there's this other thing. It's a 1 in a million, but I'm going to go for it because, us and, life and reasons. And I think she would be totally on board. Why not? Of course. And I'm going to be there with you, and I'm going to be there when you get out of it, and, no matter what happens. And if he comes out looking like a desiccated raisin, then you'd be like, yeah, but you're alive. That's what's important. So, yeah, but, you got to have a movie, and you got to have the character. You got to move the plot along, and you got to have the main character make mistakes, and you got to have him learn from those mistakes. So, it's fine to, Monday morning quarterback, the decisions and say that, that was dumb. But ultimately, we do want a flawed main character. We do want him to make mistakes. We want him to learn from those mistakes. We want him to grow, and we want to be along for the ride. And that's
you got to have a story.
You do. You kind of got to have a story. It's weird, but it's a thing.
Yeah. So before we get into the final summary and review, tell me how excited you are about Deadpool 2. When do you expect to see it? And do you have any, thoughts on it before you see it?
So I was excited. My favorite Marvel villain character is this big, dumb bruiser character named Juggernaut. And he fights Deadpool. He's fought the X-Men over the years. He's this big, unstoppable dude that wears this big armor and helmet that prevents against psionic attacks. And he got his powers from touching this gem, the ruby bands of Cyttorak. And it was teased in one of the Deadpool 2 promos. He's doing this Bob Ross imitation, and he's painting this scene, and then he paints this like big red blob character thing, and it's like, oh, is there a big red blob monster villain that you're going to be fighting, like Juggernaut? So I haven't heard any of the buzz. I know Cable's in the movie, another Rob Liefeld character, and Domino, and a lot of the X-Force Shatterstar's in it, a lot of the X-Force characters. But I haven't heard anything about Juggernaut being in it or not. So I don't know. And I don't really know what the plot is. I don't know. I mean, obviously, if Cable's in it, he's coming back from the future. If anybody doesn't know, Cable is Nathan Summers, who is the child of Scott Summers, who has and Jean Grey, Scott Summers and Jean Grey from the future.
Cyclops and Phoenix, right?
Yeah, Cyclops and Phoenix. He has telekinetic abilities, super strong telekinetic abilities, but he's infected by the techno-organic virus, and his psionic abilities are always fighting it. So if he were to ever stop fighting it, his body would become this, Terminator character, like fully metal machine type thing. So he's constantly keeping that in check. So it's preventing him from really having any kind of strong psionic abilities. So he's kind of an interesting character, and so I am looking forward to that. Josh Brolin is pretty good for the most part. He's really killing it in terms of the Marvel comics. I mean, he's Cable, and he's also Thanos, and he was Jonah Hex, and not that Jonah Hex was any good, but, I mean, it's kind of weird to have him being Cable and Thanos. Whatever.
Yeah, he's a guy who can blend into another role very different from some of the other actors we were talking about earlier, like Reynolds and Damon and even Vince Vaughn. Like, those three are who they are, no matter what movie.
Absolutely. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to the movie. I don't necessarily have immediate plans to go see it, but I would like to for sure. I mean, unfortunately, the nearest cinema is 40 miles away. I might make the trip. I don't know, but I'm looking forward to it. So, what about you, Daniel-san?
Well, I don't plan to see it anytime soon. Maybe when it comes out on the Vudu or the Netflix or the Amazon Prime, but I will check it out. I did enjoy this one. I do own it on the Vudu, and it was a fun movie. Watched it with the wife, and I'll just do final summary and review here. This is a movie that it goes almost 2 hours, but it feels much quicker and shorter because of the folded narrative, like we talked about earlier, and I think they did that purposefully, perhaps even in editing, to break up the dark and the humor, like the really dark shit and the humor stuff. And I think it works in this one. It kind of keeps you guessing, but it still tells you, it propels the story forward, and then you're dropped into present, and then it goes on to the end. So overall, a very, very tight and well done movie. I did enjoy all of the actors and all that, though I don't have the whole history of the comic books and even the whole Marvel universe. I've seen a handful of the Marvel movies, but I did notice some nods even with that limited exposure. So overall, I'm going to give this a 6.9. Fairly high and fairly tongue-in-cheek or nod to, ha ha ha, 69 kind of stuff. What about you, sir?
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed the movie. I was curious about whether or not you're going to like it. You are my age, so I would assume this kind of humor would work on you, but, who knows? Who knows? I mean, you're not quite in the same kind of nerd world than I am. This movie is not perfect. It it is kind of just more of a fun adventure, and it really works whether or not it made you laugh, I think. It made me laugh hysterically, and I appreciated all the little nods, and I got all the little references and in-jokes and all that stuff. So there are different levels of enjoyment you can get with this movie, where if you're really balls deep in this kind of stuff, you can get all the references and jokes and all that stuff, and where if you're just like a casual watcher, you're going to get, just some of it. So it's really kind of a fan servicey sort of a movie. But I think there's enough of a plot there. There's enough for everybody. That just about anybody can really enjoy it. I wouldn't recommend like the elderly to go watch something like this. But if you're, middle-aged or younger, I think you're going to have a lot of good times at either this movie or the next one. There's a lot of self-referential stuff that you may or may not get, but I think anybody can appreciate kind of self-deprecating humor. And I'm going to give this movie, because this is just right in my wheelhouse. Really, if you're making a movie for Robert, you're making a movie like this. It's not my favorite movie of all time, but it felt like it very much catered to me in what it was trying to do. It's not like a Steel Magnolias or whatever.
Fried green tomatoes.
It's not a serious drama where they're really tugging your heartstrings. It's a fun adventure that tried to make you laugh, and it succeeded on all cylinders for me. So this movie is an 8.8. Really highly recommended for if you appreciate, if you've listened to other episodes that we've done and you appreciate my sensibilities, my reviews, then I think you'll enjoy this one too.
All right, well done. It just dawned on me that the ratings we've been giving really have no frame of reference, so it's almost meaningless numbers. But hey, we're here to talk. We are the Last Nighters. We're just talking about movies from a very unconventional perspective. So I did want to throw out that we do now have the podcast feed live. It's on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, and et cetera type places. You can find the links to those at lastnighters.com. Also, there's a podcast hosting page that's anchor.fm/lastnighters, so do check that out. And we do also have a YouTube page that we could use a few more subscribers to get that custom URL. So if you could head on over that way, mosey on over, either click through from lastnighters.com or do a little search within the YouTube and look for Last Nighters. You'll find us. Give us a subscribe there, and that would definitely help us out. So with that, I'm going to bid you guys adieu. You can find the show notes and more at lastnighters.com/20, and I will say good night from the last night. And she's clean, Bob. Going back to the actual Anarchy show for a few more minutes before we potentially do a little bit of the Kathleen Turner Overdrive. But you guys just heard all the things we did on the Last Nighters, so you know about the podcast feed and all that. Robert, was there anything that you felt you were holding back and you wanted to save for the anarchists in the world here?
You guys are all a bunch of assholes, and I hate everybody. Oh, man, that's such a weight off my chest. No, I think I let it all out right there. I appreciated that we put on those little rants about the city councils, because those people deserve to be taken down. They're just the worst. It didn't have anything to do with the movie, but tough shit. That's the way it goes.
Well, it had a little bit. I mean, the throwaway line about Detroit ends up being a 20-minute rant for us.
There you go. One little throwaway line inspires a 20-minute rant. Good. Hey, I'll take it. Whatever it takes, man. Those people are just the worst. The fact that they virtue signal about being, the whole tax is for, quote, the homeless, and it's just hilarious. The idea that government comes along and interferes in the housing industry every which way but loose. It regulates what sort of materials you can use for what application. It stops and halts and approves the process of construction at every juncture, requiring approval for architecture plans, materials, environmental issues and response and impacts, and all kinds of this statements and that. All that does is drive up the cost of housing astronomically, and yet the market still kind of makes it a little bit affordable, thanks to what freedom left there is. But all the government does is create massive impediments to housing people, and then they get to virtue signal about how they can steal money from profitable businesses and say that, but this is for the homeless because we're the most efficient way to house the homeless. because we're going to make a bunch of low-cost housing for people because we're not the ones that totally make housing astronomically priced in the first place. No, that's the evil free market. Yeah, right. It's disgusting.
Yeah. It is kind of hilarious that in Seattle, the homeless population has more than doubled in the last 10 years. And what have they been doing so far, with all the money that's already been given to them to combat that problem? It's doubled. It's gotten worse, so all they can do is cry, understaffed, under-budgeted, and now they're going to go and clamor for more money. Meanwhile, out of every dollar that gets thieved from people via taxation, only about 20% actually makes it to the intended purpose. 80% of it gets eaten up in bureaucratic nonsense and graft and salaries and just administrative nonsense and inefficiencies. So if you really want to help, and here's the irony of this, if they push this too much further, Amazon and other companies are going to leave. And all of a sudden, you're going to find yourselves with a glut of housing, affordable housing, because there's going to be a whole bunch of people not working there anymore. They're going to leave, and they're going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, and housing prices will drop due to lack of demand, but not because, this is a fairly artificial way of creating affordable housing.
It's a backfiring kind of way is what it is. And, a buddy of mine, he's worked for city government, now he works for, I think, a representative in the U.S. Congress. And he and I would talk back in 2006, 2007, right before the housing bubble burst, and he was talking about all these initiatives that the city or the county was going to undertake to help with affordable housing. I was like, dude, just wait.
Yeah.
It can't keep going like this. And, I was somewhat proven right with the housing bust, but it's a similar deal now. Just wait. Just let the market deal with the situation. If people are moving there and there's competition for housing, there's demand for housing, then allow other people to meet that demand.
Or you could try and tax away all your economically profitable businesses that have
That's
pumped
the alternative, yes.
billions and billions, tens of billions of dollars pumped into the economy of Seattle by Amazon. Tens of billions. And they're just throw that all away. It's hilarious. They're killing the golden goose. But, no one ever claimed that they were smart.
Yep. So now that we've thrown another 10-minute rant on top of the 20-minute rant we did in the middle of the show, why don't we start winding this entire show down, because we are going a little bit long on the tooth here. We've been going almost an hour and a half, actually. So one of our longer episodes as of late, we did at the New Year try to tighten up the show. We introduced the Last Nighters. We're trying to be more segmented and formatted and concise and shorter. And here we are kind of breaking that mold. But we just have a lot to rant about. So any last messages for our audience, Robert?
So we're being more segmented like Human Centipede style? Is
yes.
that? Okay. Just want to be sure. Good. Human Centipede. I like it.
Segmented annelid like a worm.
Very good. I'm honored and humbled every day by the people that listen to this show, actually listen to us rant about these things. It's a lot of fun for us to do it and to get any kind of feedback, even positive or negative, or criticism of any kind is really appreciated. So if you want to get a hold of us, you want to message us on the Facebooks, on the Twitters, at the website, we would love to hear from you. So thanks for listening, and thanks for all you do in promoting liberty around the world. Man, it's a daunting task, but is there any more necessary? So thanks for listening, everybody.
All right, well, that's our show, everyone. So this has been our show on Deadpool, actualanarchy.com/77, show notes and more. You can support us on Patreon and get some bonus content. We might do a little bit of Kathleen Turner Overdrive after this. We did mention during the show that we now have a podcast feed for the Last Nighters, and one cool thing related to what Robert was just saying of giving us some feedback is that in Anchor.fm, if you sign up on there to listen to our show, you can actually leave us 1-minute-long messages that we can then incorporate into the show. So if you want to have yourself appear on our show, some comment that we would then respond to, sign up on Anchor.fm, look us up, and send us some messages. We would love to try that out and see how it works. So check it out.
Definitely. Sounds great.
All right. Well, we're going to get into a little bit of Kathleen Turner Overdrive after this. So thank you guys very much. We do appreciate it. And good luck and good night.
The Chipmunks. CHIPMUNK. We're the chipmunks. Guaranteed to brighten your day. Do 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 do.